A US NGO, Room to Read, has similar findings and says girls in low-income communities will suffer the most as their education takes a back seat amid financial hardships. Well, for more on this, we can speak with Laurie McMahon, Chief Development Officer from Room to Read. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Just explain, because the figures sound very shocking. You're suggesting that, as well as Save the Children, that maybe 10 million children, particularly girls, won't go back to school. What are the reasons? What's happening which means they won't re-enter education?
Good morning, Rosie. So Room to Read has conducted an extensive study of 24,000 girls on Room to Read's Girls Education Programme. And that's conducted across 8 countries in Asia and Africa. And it's showing us some really worrying signs. The headline sign is that 1 of every 2 girls is at risk of not returning to school once schools reopen after the pandemic. And that's due to a number of factors. We know that child marriage is going to increase as a consequence of the pandemic. The statistics are showing that child marriage is likely to increase by 4 million as a consequence of this crisis. Children are also vulnerable to entering the labour market early, to being required to support domestically in raising younger siblings or elderly grandparents. And then there are the even scarier issues such as sex trafficking and other forms of exploitation that children are particularly vulnerable to right now.
So what kind of education, if any, are those girls in particular getting, or have they been getting over the last few months?
So here at Room to Read, we pivoted our programming very quickly. Typically, we're working in schools and in homes with children. We moved to go remote very fast as schools closed down around the world. So we have a team of what we call social mobilizers around the world. They are essentially mentors, particularly to girls. And they have been picking up the phone, they have been texting, they've been reaching out directly to the girls to check that they are safe, they're healthy, that their learning is continuing, and to really assess whether or not they are vulnerable to some of these risks that we know that they will face, and where they are, to help them navigate that, negotiate with parents, bring in community leaders where they need to, so that they are well positioned to return to school when it does reopen.
Clearly, there are going to be some long-term impacts because of the loss of this education and some of the other factors that you talked about. But in a few years down the line, how do you think that's going to manifest in these girls' lives?
Well, we know that by educating girls and by educating young women, we educate future generations. So it's not just going to manifest itself in these girls' lives, but in the lives of their future children and their future children. We know that it will limit their work opportunities, their ability to enter tertiary education. For girls on Room to Read's Girls Education Programme, we have incredible success rates where 90% of girls on the programme will graduate and go into tertiary education or into the workforce. And those statistics are in jeopardy right now if we can't get girls back to school.
Thank you very much for giving us a little bit more context into what's happening across the world to children's education, particularly that of females. Laurie McMahon, Chief Development Officer from Room to Read.